Hey everyone, Quade here, and today I'm going to inform you all of what exactly rabies is, who can get it, symptoms, and ways to prevent it. I believe this needs to be known because I don't think we're aware of it enough that, because rabies can be a very sad and painful death. So, come to think of it, a lot of the times with rabies, everybody thinks of the whole zombie apocalypse thing. In a way, this is true, and in a way, it's not true. The reason why it's not true is because rabies is a very powerful virus. And ultimately, it will kill off the host. It doesn't mean to, but that's just how powerful it is. The reason why it can't be true is because, yes, you start to lose your mind, you start to be wobbly, and you start to go crazy, but most of the time you're not able to up and walk around. So rabies is a virus, of course. It is oddly enough, is a bullet-shaped virus. So interesting enough because the end game is death. So with the virus, of course, we cannot see it with our eyes. We have to put it, test it, of course, within a microscope. So the way to test for rabies is it's very unfortunate, and hopefully they come up with something in the future. But the host has to be deceased. You send the head off to a laboratory where they will go into the brain, cut a piece off inside the brain, put it on a glass slab where they'll put some iodine and some other chemicals in it. They will put the glass slab underneath a microscope where they have black light. Look in the microscope, and if you see yellow and green neon spots, then that means that animal was rabies positive. So, unfortunately, right now, that's the only way of testing. So, who can get rabies? Of course, mammals. That's all that can get it. And yes, we are mammals, so yes, we can get it. Um, there are different kinds of carriers, and high risk carriers are the ones that can actually be infected for quite a while and not show symptoms for a while. There's only five of them, and they are all wildlife. It is skunks, and then there is raccoons, and then there are bats, which oddly enough, with bats, there are a couple breeds of bats that actually cannot get rabies, but it's not in this area, of course. There's foxes, and then last coyotes. So it's nice to know about these high risk carriers because, like I said, they do not show symptoms a lot of times when they're infected before the end game, and so it's nice to know about that. So, how is rabies transmitted? Rabies is transmitted through infected saliva and or animal bite. So, the infected saliva, how that works is considered if you have a wound on your hand, an open wound, and your dog unfortunately is infected and you don't know it and drools all over your open wound, well, now ultimately you are infected. And of course, animal bite is explanatory. In a rare case, there is organ transplants, air transmission, and then, of course, contamination of mucous membranes. Um, the good example of that is like a domesticated cat that can come in and out. So your cat brings in a mouse, even though that is considered a low risk of rabies, but it's still possible. So your cat brings in the mouse. Normally, they always have it around the head. So there's saliva, and then if they, punctured, then they've got the mucous membrane as well. Now, your cat could be updated on their vaccinations, but if the cat happens to bite you or drool on an open wound of you, then ultimately you are now infected. So symptoms, unfortunately, with symptoms, once they arise, it's too late. So on the animal side, this is more for domesticated animals. So once they're infected, they have a 2 to 10 day period where they start to show symptoms. And normally on the 10th day is when death occurs. So there's behavioral change, there's fever, there's sensitive to light, sound, touch, there's seizures, a lot of saliva, which can be misconstrued because if a dog or cat is overly excited or they're overly scared, they can have a lot of saliva. So that can be confusing as well. Just like another example would be a dog that's eating on a frog. They have some kind of like poisonous mucus that comes out of the frog. interesting. But that can make a lot of foam and a lot of saliva come up as well. Loss of appetite, and then also, of course, death. There is also another virus called distemper. This is also a preventable virus that if you keep your animals up to date on shots, then you don't have to really worry about it. So these actually, distemper has the same symptoms as rabies. So unfortunately, you don't know the two, but it's always best to stay safe and send the animal off anyways, because even with distemper, death is the end game. So with humans, there's an incubation period, 2 to 3 months. This is average, but it can vary from 1 week to 1 year depending on where the infected area started. So if you got bit on your foot, then it will take a long time for that rabies to get up to the central nervous system of the brain. So it can take a while. So there are two forms. There's the furious rabies, which is the rare case. This is you become very hyperactive. You start to be hydrophobic and then aerophobic, which hydrophobic is afraid of water. Aerophobic is afraid of air. And then in a few days, death occurs because you go into a cardio respiratory arrest. The second form is the paralytic. I said that wrong. Sorry. Paralytic rabies. This is less traumatic and longer. Um, Unfortunately, it's still very sad and very painful. So you will start to become paralyzed over time with your muscles. So wherever the affected bite happens, that's where the muscle will start paralyzing. So like if you got bit on the foot, then it's going to start going up to your leg and then slowly up from there. Um, which will ultimately put you into a coma, which of course will be death. The reason why I put possibly is because there has been some rare cases where there is known cases of about 9 people that actually survived after having symptoms of rabies and go through the post-exposure, which is very interesting, but very rare. It's one in like a cajillion million. So ways to prevent it. Can it be prevented? Yeah, it can be. So there are ways. Keep your pets up to date on vaccinations. You can even vaccinate yourself if you want to. It's a little bit cheaper than the post exposure, and it also is not as painful as the post exposure. But it's very rare that you're going to vaccinate yourself, anyways, unless you're going out to a country like Africa or some parts of Asia where there's a huge high risk of rabies. Or if you're like in a profession like I am as an animal control officer, you deal with wildlife and domesticated animals all the time. You never know what's going to come up. So another one is to maintain control of your pets. So if you take them to a dog park, make sure you're paying attention to them. Make sure you're watching them, playing with them. You never know if that person that brings their animal in isn't vaccinated. You never know. I mean, this isn't just for rabies, but this is just in general. So stay away from strange or unknown pets and wildlife. A good example for that is a bat was found during recess with a child that brought it into the school, showed the teacher got all excited and showed the other teachers, the other class, and come to find out that bat turned out to be positive for rabies. And now everybody that was exposed has to go through post exposure, which is expensive and very, very painful set of shots. So also report all loose animals. Report animal bites when they happen. I know most people don't want to, but your animal is going to be safe unless someone, your owner surrender it. Other than that, you just goes through a couple of days of quarantine, and then you'll have your animal back. But it's always best to be safe. So get with your local animal control. If you don't have one, then talk to your sheriff's office. And of course, yes, that is me over there. So, in conclusion, in the United States, rabies has gone down in numbers a lot with time, but we still need to be aware of it because it's still here. And it is, like I said, is a very dangerous and very powerful virus. So just remember there are ways to prevent it. Keep your pets up to date, maintain control of them, get with your local animal control, and stay educated. So that's my speech. Thank you.